Well, it's Friday morning, and I'm back with more relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. I hope that you all enjoyed having Nicole the last couple of streams on Monday and Wednesday as she started and completed the very complicated and large Beholder. I had a chance to see it when I got back yesterday, and it's really pretty amazing. I don't know how well it showed up on the stream, but in real life it is. So one thing, is if you've been watching my painting and compare it to hers, is that she's really, really good at color selection and layering, especially layering and shading. And I'm not. I'm pretty good at coloring and staying within the lines. That's probably the best way to describe my skill, is that I have learned how to stay within the lines, but then doing anything a little bit more sophisticated than that, picking a color, maybe using a wash on it. Sometimes I'll try a highlight, but that's why my figures look the way they do and why hers looks the way they do. But that aside, what we're going to be working on today is yet more of these sewer tiles. These are yet to be made gray, so I'm going to be starting off by doing the base coating on 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 32 of these sewer floor tiles, so I'll just be putting gray paint on those. There's enough of them so that the first ones I do will probably be dry enough for touch-up by the time I get to the end, and I'll be able to finish those. Maybe somehow find a place to put them here, and then I'll be starting to do a green wash on the gray ones that I did last week. There's 144 of these altogether, and we got one bottle of green wash, and I think we've hardly ever used this. The last time we did sewer tiles, there was probably maybe 30 of them, I'm thinking. Not very many, so we'll see how far that goes. Hopefully I won't run out. So these are just the floor tiles, and we need to get started here. So I'll be starting by mixing up the paint, which has been sitting around for a little while and has settled pretty nicely. Is this a new bottle? Yeah, this is a brand new bottle. It hasn't even been used yet. Doing that exciting thing, stirring paint and brushing it on these tiles. And I see that, yes, I will do a flip. I even got a flip thing for you. I got a pen. I haven't flipped a pen yet. I was trying to find something that hadn't been flipped in a while, but I'll be happy to flip you off in just a little bit. I see though that the studio has changed a little bit. One is that it's cluttered. So between now and, I probably don't need to worry about it until Submarine Wednesday. Then I'll have to find the colors I was using and get that arranged and set up a little more room here because of the size of the parts. But the big thing is that the camera has been rotated 90 degrees, and so now you're seeing it from the side because Nicole didn't like this being right in front of her face, whereas I think I'm better off having it there. But I'm going to leave it here because I'm just painting sewer tiles, so the orientation, as you can see, orientation does not matter too terribly much. Flip. Here we go. Occasional flip. I'll even do an extra one because I'd been gone for a while. All right. Stir the paint. This is going to be a little bit because this is very much settled in the bottle. And as Who has noted, oh, there we go, we're getting an effect. And it's moving the whole camera. Pretty cool. It's wavering. And it's rotating. Yeah, I'm much better at creating the wave effect for some reason. And the whole thing is, you can't see it off screen here, but the entire foam container that holds the little vortex mixer was starting to wander around. It's like moving. Yeah, it's still moving. Yeah, I'm not sure why that was. Maybe I hold it down more. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky. Yeah, but there it goes. Oh, that was good as a starting and finishing. I'm noticing that it is at low speeds. I could really get it going there. There we go. Hopefully that is mixed well. Just moving some things aside here to get myself more room so that I can set these tiles down somewhere. What do we want to do? We want to put gloves on because I want to get paint, on my fingers, almost certainly. Isn't Stairmaster, wasn't that sort of copyrighted? That was an episode of My Little Pony? Yeah, I think it was. That was one of the episodes. Don't ask me how I know. But, yeah, so as long as there's no like little TM or R in a circle or something, or C in a circle, it should be okay to say that. Sometimes I just can't really see the chat screen. I know something popped up, but I can't read it. Guess I'll have to look later. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Opening the gray paint. I mean, what could be more thrilling on a Friday morning than watching quantities of gray paint be spread on square tiles? I can't imagine. Hey, well, nice fresh bottle of paint. And as I was noting the last time I was working on these, there's all sorts of little texture on the surface. And so I need to do that. I found that kind of works to because the paint doesn't necessarily flow into the little divots, as well as, by just brushing across the surface. So doing this kind of pushes it down in there, and then I just go across it once. Not that, given the texture of the surface and the nature of the paint, I'm not getting any brush marks really, but, just to make sure it's uniform. We do that kind of thing. This is actually kind of relaxing. The most strenuous part of this for me is, to make sure that I get all four sides here. I have to pay attention that much. And when I was painting before last week, I only missed one side on one tile, so that was pretty decent. Well, no, it's going to rain now, but not until really late. There's supposed to be precipitation, like after 1 or 2 in the morning or something, which is not really Friday night, even though that's what the National Weather Service calls it, is Friday night. It's, I guess, really technically Saturday morning. But it's unusual to have a Friday evening without snow or sleet or something. I'll be doing this now until about 2, because that's when relaxing painting happens, from 10 until 2, more or less. And sometimes it starts a little late, sometimes it ends a little early, depending on what it is that is being painted and whether or not there's other stuff going on. But other than for a break, which always takes longer than I anticipate, got a new break button. A little studio thing here. There's room for 15 buttons, each of which can have like multiple uses. And when I first started this stream on a regular basis and learned how to get everything going on my own, there were like 9, maybe. No, there's no picture. It's just words. So it says start break. But for me, that's good. I was never really very good with understanding pictograms, so sometimes it's weird. Sometimes now you buy something, at a hardware store, a piece of equipment, a tool that requires some assembly, and the instructions sometimes don't have any words, they just have pictures. And the pictures have these little line drawings, and I have to tell you, sometimes the line drawings don't seem to have any match with anything that actually came in the box of the tool. So they're all like nicely numbered, like 1 through 27, in terms of the assembly steps. Okay. But what it is they're trying to tell you to do is very difficult. Anyway, no, there's not a new picture. It just says start break. Anyway, there were like 8 buttons on it, and I thought I was hitting them right, but then I was told in no uncertain terms that I had royally screwed up one of these sessions. Didn't hit the start recording button, even though I thought I did. I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, we talk about it on our stream about the demographics being under 7 and over 70. I think what happened was our DM, who also is the person who sets up the studio, decided that that basically the capability of me was within that demographic, that either I had the capability of someone under 7 or, in my case, literally over 70. And so the number of buttons just got down to next to nothing. So now there's like 4 buttons instead of maybe 8 or 9, 7 or 8 or however many there were. And they have like really simple instructions on them. I guess I shouldn't, I shouldn't take offense, I guess. This will be much simpler for you. When you get started, push number 1. Then push number 2. If you take a break, push start break. It has cut down on errors, I have to say that. It's pretty hard to screw it up when there's only 4 buttons and they're well labeled like that. Kind of like the TV Batman's Lair, where everything was very neatly labeled. Okay, well, I've got 4 out of 32 done. Those of you who do arithmetic will remember, note that is 2/16 or 1/8. 1/8 being something like 1.65, 1.625, I forget exactly what, which tells you, I used to remember that, but it's less than 20%. It's less than a fifth of the way there. But moving along. Whirly bit. I found that if I do that, the amount of touch-up is pretty limited. Mainly just catching the corners where I might have taken some of the paint off. Remove this from the sticky tack handle. Yep, anyway, now I've got an under 7 and over 70 studio key panel there. There's nothing terribly much confusing or confusable. This is our software upgrades, which happen with some frequency. Thing is working. Why not? Well, because somebody decided that it would be a great time to push through a software upgrade, like 15 minutes before the stream was supposed to start. Some of them are nice, when you boot up the computer, it says update available. Do you want to install it now or later? And you can tell it later, please. I'm trying to get something done here. And it just keeps doing that, of course, reminding one until finally it's done. But some of them just decide, well, it's available, you're going to get it. And after you get it, everything else that you have running isn't going to work because, I don't know, all the links are broken, or some parameter was reset to default. Default isn't what it used to be. It's the new default. That hasn't happened in a while. That was 6 out of 32. 3/16. It's not an easy fraction to turn into a decimal. but we're coming up on a real milestone pretty soon. This is 7:30 seconds. And 7 being prime number, that's not reducible to a smaller fraction. Not a smaller fraction. Size of the fraction stays the same, but I mean a smaller denominator. I remembered that word. Was it 3rd grade or something? 2nd or 3rd grade? We learned about numerators and denominators. Back in the day when calculators were gigantic desk-sized machines. And if you were going to divide a number by another number, you did long division. I don't really recall why it was called long division, because I don't think we were ever taught short division. So if there is no short division option, why would there need to be a long division option? It's the difference. To this day, I have to say, I never really paid attention to that, but there we are. The adjective, why long division if there is no short division? Maybe it's just one of those things, because when you're in whatever grade it was that we started doing division, to call it long division made it sound like more of an accomplishment, didn't it? Oh, you're just doing short division, huh? I, on the other hand, because that's how 2nd graders talked with each other, you know, when they were doing Monkey Island stuff and showing their superiority. I, on the other hand, am doing long division. How is that short division working out for you? Are you carrying it out to the 18th decimal place? Well, I did. It's a number that never ends. It just keeps going. I bet that has a name. Not that we ever knew what the name was back in those days, but, you know, at that grade, but. So that's definitely the kind of taunting that we did with each other in my 2nd or 3rd grade class. But actually, that particular taunt about short division was not something that occurred, because there wasn't any short division, just the long kind. So. Oh no, I talked right over the milestone. 8:30 seconds, 1/4, 25%. A quarter pounder. That's like the first milestone in things feeling like they're getting done. Here, a quarter of the way through. That's making real progress. Anyway. Yeah, so anyway, I've got under 7 or over 70 calibrated interface panel now. That's supposed to prevent me from making any kind of error in producing this stream. You know, I suppose if I had any kind of curiosity, since there's 15 buttons on the thing and only 4 are being used, I would go, what does this button do? What does this button do? What does this button do? And I'd be pushing them all. And of course they don't do anything because they have to be linked through the software to a certain function. I mean, that would be kind of under 7 kind of thing to do. It's just, you know, punch the buttons while saying, what does this button do? Not really wanting an answer. It might be an expression of curiosity, like really wanting to know what the button does. But then you would wait for an answer before punching the button. But that's not how it works. It's like you're saying, what does this button do? Usually after you've already punched the button, in which case it's not a question about wanting real information about the purpose and function of the button. It's just more a statement of you being a jerk. What is this button? What is this button? And you usually, you know, you especially do that, you know, otherwise you could just push the buttons and see what happened, right? You could do an experiment kind of thing. But if you're doing the what does this button do kind of taunt, you're taunting. So, anyway, I'm not going to bother doing that because I really don't care what the other buttons do. I'm here to do relaxing painting, not button taunting. So I'm guessing who probably would if who were doing this, who would be doing less painting and more of the what does this button do kind of thing. Probably would be doing things like, oh, what does this color look like if it is spilled all over the work surface? Gee, wouldn't the microphone look good if it were painted like this? Or, I don't know, I haven't broken anything lately. Let me break this. Actually, more commonly, oh, I have not started anything on fire now, since the break has ended. Let's see if this will burn. Maybe we should have who as a guest star sometime and just see what kind of destruction would be wrought. This is 12. 1236, that's not a bad thing. 1236, those numbers are all divisible by other numbers, so you can turn that into 1/3. That's pretty good. I mean, you take a big number like 36 and then reduce it down to a little number like 3. The magic of fractions and division. So this is 12/36, which doesn't sound like much. In fact, it sounds kind of confusing. Those are both big numbers, 12/36, but you can turn that into 1/3. Which is a pretty 1/3 is a pretty good fraction and suggests a fair amount of progress toward completion. Unfortunately, it's not a very good decimal. It's one of those evil decimals, one of those infinite decimals. C completed. So 1/3 turns into 0.333333333333, and you could keep saying 3, and your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren until the very end of the universe, when no one would care anymore, at least that we know of. Would just have to keep, in order to say it, or to get it completed, we just have to keep saying 3 forever. And I'm not sure if is that more frightening than annoying, or more annoying than frightening. Anyway, yeah, 1/3 is a really nice, neat fraction, but a really, really nasty decimal. Anyway, that's what that one was, that last one. This one is 13/32, and you can't do anything with that at all. It's just 13. Unlucky number in this case. Although, this is the 13th tile on a Friday. There are 32 of these, is quite a few. It's not as many as 144, which is what I started with. And you would expect that to be the case, because if you keep painting, and as long as you're not replenishing the store from which, not the store as in a retail establishment or wholesale sales place, but the supply, the number, as long as you're not replacing the number of tiles so that when you get one done, you get another one to do, which is what it would be like if this were a real assembly line kind of factory kind of situation. But no, in this case, they're not replaced, and so by getting one done, one is actually closer to complete. Even though when you start with 144, it takes a while to feel like you're getting anywhere. But anyway, this is getting much closer to being finished with the gray paint. What did I say? This is number 13? 15, sorry, number 15. It's another one of those you can't do anything with the fraction, really. This is number 14. Yeah, you can turn that into 7/16. That doesn't really get you anywhere either, though, perceptually. So this next one is 15, 30 seconds. One good thing about this new camera arrangement is that it's pulled back far enough so that it's hard to get off screen. See that who stopped communicating. I guess, talking about division was just too much. Okay, well, this next one is great symbolic value. Okay, this is 16/32, which is 8/16. That doesn't sound like much, does it? 4/8, and that just sounds awkward. Or 2/4, which also sounds awkward, but is in fact half. This is 1/2. 1/2, 50%. At this point, one could say, now we're getting somewhere. We're halfway done. So 1/2 that's a real nice number. Everybody can relate to that. Half of this or half of that. It is kind of oddly, though, much harder to relate to something like 2/4 or 4/8. It's exactly the same number. But you never hear people going, I am 4/8 of the way through. Well, that's great. So there, that was a symbolic achievement of being halfway through. Now after this, I'm more than halfway through. I'm working on 17/32, and that doesn't sound, that's just another one of those weirdly awkward numbers. So let's just say I'm now more than half through, halfway done. Yeah. So, speaking of like 1/3 or 2/3, where you end up with a number that it just, in terms of the integers that we use, as a decimal go on forever. I mean, when you think about it, and I don't know that anybody really does, or if they did, why, but I've got dead air to fill here, so we're going to think about it. If I'm remembering correctly, usually what happens is you go on, 0.3, and you might go on for like two more digits or something, 0.333. And if I'm remembering correctly, the convention at that point was to put a straight line, like a dash. I think it was above the number, the last 3. I'm pretty sure. I know there was weird, not having done that for like 2 lifetimes of some of you. Can't remember exactly, but I think it was like a bar over the number, which meant that you just repeated that number forever. So, you'd see like 2, maybe 3 digits of 0.33 or 0.333, and then the last one would have that bar on it. And that just meant that you would have 3s that just never ended. And that, that wasn't too hard to deal with. And it's like, oh yeah, well, we just have, a whole lot more 3s, and they just go on. And you didn't have to think about it any more than that. Unless you were doing some sort of engineering thing where you'd have to actually work out more decimals, like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 of them or something. And even then, it's not too awful. But if you think of it in terms of, this is your family's job. Your family's job is to complete the decimal of 1/3. which means that you need to say 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So you maybe can say, I don't know, let's say 3 threes a second, just to keep this, the 1/3 and the 3 theme going. So your job is to say 3 threes per second. And okay, well, we'll give you breaks. You only have to do that, for 8 hours a day. Really, what you really should say is that you can't ever eat or sleep. There's no breaks, no weekends, no holidays, no trips to the beach, unless, of course, what you do while you're taking these trips is you keep saying three times per second. So let's do that. Let's do an extreme, okay? You have to keep saying three times per second. And then, you eventually retire, and your children, maybe there's more than one of you, and you take turns. So your family, that's your family responsibility, not your individual one. We'll just say that. Keep saying three times per second. And that goes on for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren. At some point, you begin to not even be able to think about the generations that have passed. And you begin to think about, like, just the passage of time. Somebody needs to keep saying three times per second until the sun goes nova. No, even that. You get to be on an interstellar spaceship, okay? And you get to escape here before the sun goes nova and the planet ends. But somebody needs to keep saying three times per second until entropy destroys the universe as we know it. And you still haven't made any progress at all. Even through all that time and all of those threes, you really haven't made any progress at all in actually completing the decimal of 1/3. Somehow that seems to me just a little bit more disturbing than 0.33 with a bar over the last 3. Who would invent a number system as diabolical as that? There's something as simple as 1 out of 3. To turn into such a nightmare of saying three times a second until the universe ended and you still hadn't come anywhere close to completing it. So the next time you see a 1/3, maybe it'll give you shivers. It should. And there are other numbers like that too. Probably be coming up on one here if I pay attention to what number of tile we're on, but I haven't been, having been so distracted by the notion of what infinite really means. So, there. That's the latest old guy rant about numbers and fractions and decimals. So maybe what it's saying is that even though, when it comes time to practical application of numbers, fractions are really not very useful. Okay, I mean, they can if you're just using like a tape measure or something in the imperial system and you're dealing with 16ths or even 64ths of an inch, that kind of thing. People can get kind of familiar at that level. And the fractions work there. But they don't really work terribly well. Sophisticated use of numbers, which is why things get turned into decimals, but decimals can become scary. So the number pi, which is not something you can eat, unfortunately. I'm going to give this a stir. It's starting to separate a little bit. It's another one of those common numbers that goes on and on forever. In this case, it becomes more complicated because you can't just have endless generations until the end of the universe just saying three times a second. All the numbers are different. Then there are some of a certain age, probably, short of high school, where it would just be kind of weird and not something you could gloat about. But like when you first learn about pi, what grade that would be in, but let's just say it's some sort of like middle school age. It has to be, right? And then you learn that pi isn't like 3 decimals long. It's not just like 1614, and there isn't any. You can't put a bar over the last number or anything, meaning that number keeps going on forever. There's nothing that convenient about it. It's that each next number is a different number, and it doesn't come around, it doesn't repeat. So I think the nerd equivalent of a bully might be somebody that would go, I just calculated pi to the 176th digit. Back in the day when you had to do that with a paper and pencil, that would be that'd be kind of a thing somebody might say, and then you go, that's all you had to do for your entire summer vacation, is you sat around calculating pi to that number. Somebody else has already done that. You can probably just look it up. And then every once in a while you read about, a news story. I guess not so much anymore because computing power is so strong and it's not really a thing. But when computers were relatively new, it was, oh yeah, we calculated pi to the 10th to the 9th. It's another thing, to orders of magnitude. But that's a digression, yeah. So it's, big news that somebody calculated pi out that many digits. Folks would go, oh yeah, wow, that's cool, that's a lot of digits. What does it have to do with me? Is that going to give me a winning lotto number? Anyway, yeah. But I think that, thinking about this, the psychological effect of pi is different than the effect maybe of a third. because each next digit is different, and it takes an effort to calculate those. Right, so somebody can be impressed by the fact that somebody used one of these new computers things, right, to calculate the value of pi out to some trillionth digit. So if someone came along and said, oh, somebody calculated 1/3 out to the trillionth digit, they probably would be ridiculed. It's like, yeah, I bet that number is 3, isn't it? Wow, you're a math genius. How would you possibly have known that? I bet you're all anxious for the break to start, aren't you? But no, it can't, because I have 6 more after this. This is what, 25, 30 seconds? Can't do anything with that number. Sounds like you're close to the end, though. That's another one of those perception things as the numerator, the number on top, the number you say first when you say a fraction, is a big number. It's 25. 25 is a pretty big number. And even though there's a 32 underneath, and that's a bigger number, it still feels like you're getting along pretty well. I mean, you could even say 25 47ths, and that it sounds like something. Certainly better than saying 11 of it. Yeah. Piece of plastic that came on. I think this is now numbered. This is number 27. 27. I miscounted because I was babbling about the different perception one would have of the infinity of pi as opposed to the infinity of a third. There's like a novelty with pi. Each digit is different than the preceding one. It feels like something is happening as opposed to just a monotonous repetition of 3 forever. Of course, it was possible. I don't know, nobody did this. I suppose it would be possible to create a number system in which pi, the ratio of diameter to circumference, or radius to circumference, is diameter to circumference of a circle was an integer. Then probably the things we consider to be integers would all be sorts of weird decimals, so yeah, it didn't happen. The numbers themselves are just arbitrary things. Granted that integers make sense in the physical world. You can see 1 of something. You can tell that's different than 5 of something. You can see that 5 of something are 5 ones of something. So in terms of counting, it made perfect sense that we would have what we have now, which we call it like a, integer-based system. And you can mess around with the integers. You can have integers like base 10, integers base whatever. You can even have integers base pi, I suppose. In which case pi would be an integer, right? Not a mathematician. That probably exists. It's probably in use somewhere for something to make calculations simpler. Intuitively useful. Anyway, this managed to fill some time between the start and the finish of putting gray paint on dungeon tiles. This is number 29. 29 is not a useful fraction or decimal, except 29 30-seconds. Does sound like we're getting pretty close to the end. 30 seconds sounds even closer because the first digit of both the numerator and denominator are the same. 29 30-seconds is one thing, but 30 30-seconds is another, and that probably would even work with larger denominators like 29 37ths. It doesn't sound nearly as close to the end as 30 37ths. This is now 30 30-seconds. What does that turn into? 15 16ths? That sounds even like more complete, because 15 and 16 are so close together, just one digit apart. So if you're at 15 16ths, you have to be almost done. Although that one digit apart in a fraction perception is a little bit misleading, because if you are 15 16ths done, you're not nearly as close to being done as, say, you were 85 86ths. Okay? That's way closer to being completed than 15 16ths. And 15 16ths is way closer to being completed than 3/4. So that digit apart comparison can be misleading, but nonetheless, for me, this means that I am nearly done putting gray paint on these things, which is nice. This is 31 30-seconds. That doesn't decimalize very easily. But it's like 15 16 sounded really close to being done, because the top and the bottom were just one integer apart. 31 30-seconds certainly is close to being done, especially when you're dealing with 32 things. It doesn't have the same impact, though. I mean, I'll just say that. The perceptual impact of saying 31 30-seconds isn't the same as saying just one more to go, which is much easier to understand. And this one though is 32 30-seconds. And that translates into 16 16ths, which translates into 8/8 and 4/4 and 2/2. A lot of it, just, you can't say that. I mean, there's no good way to say that except like 1/2, which has nothing to do with the 2 on the bottom, like unlike 1/3 or 1/4, where you're actually making reference to the denominator, is you get a 2 on the bottom, deuce, one tooth, one whatever, it doesn't work. Anyway, this is 1 over 1, which doesn't sound all that great anyway, but it's 100%, which is the last one. Ta-da. So what I'm going to be doing now is going back over them and touching them up. And I just scattered them sort of randomly all over the place, so some are quite dry and some aren't. Yeah, there we are. I should have been paying attention and putting them in some sort of order, but I didn't. Fortunately, these usually don't require very much touch-up. Even touching things that need touch-up. Yeah, so there we are. I'm just looking for white spots, places where the paint didn't cover and the primer is showing through. In some cases, dark spots because the primer was really thin, which doesn't much matter because the gray seems to have covered really well. I'm just picking up the ones that look like they are dry. That is to say, not shiny. Yeah, this all covered surprisingly well. I am now putting them back in kind of an order. Say the ones that are done that furthest away. I'm not going to give you a countdown of the touch-up here. I'm just going to get through it. And then, to excitement of excitements, after this is done, I'm going to start splashing green stuff all over them. Make this nice uniform gray surface look greenish and splotchy. Actually, something to be touched up. It must have been one of those awkward fractional numbers or something, because it actually required touching up in spots. Especially checking the corners, because that's where I usually pick it up off of the sticky tack holder. Anyway, I'm going to just let you contemplate arithmetic and digits and stuff here while I do touching up and stop talking for a little while, because it's nice music. Listen to that. In a little bit, I will tell you about Dyson Dungeons, which is something that needs to be done on every stream. Little while, that's a nice indeterminate amount of time, isn't it? How long is a little while? Those things is just so subjective. So if you're a little kid, not necessarily short in stature, if you're young, say maybe so when you really want to play outside, okay, and your caregiver du jour, you know, you might be a preschool or something, so it might not be a parent anyway. So somebody says, you know, you say, "I want to play outside." That's how little kids talk. I don't do voices right now. So you say, "I want to play outside." Caregiver unit says, "You can in a little while." Okay. I'm guessing that like 45 seconds is going to feel like way more than a little while. I'm doing so well here. And then just as I'm finishing up, I get paint on my pants. Nicely done. Nicely done. So yeah. And let's say you're at a Thanksgiving dinner. When will the turkey be done? Oh, in a little while. 45 seconds is way less than that little while. You know, I'd expect a little while to be more like, I don't know, maybe even 10 minutes or something, which would have been an intolerably long time. You're waiting to go play outside in a little while. So yeah, there's some rambling about the commonly used term that has, you know, what meaning does it really have? Context is everything, right? So, when I said I'll tell you about Dyson Dungeons in a little while, in your perception, has a little while elapsed yet? Or is there yet time to go before a little while has happened? And has me talking about a little while being so subjective made it feel like a little while like would never come? Because, I mean, how long can you listen to this before you go, is a little while up yet? Really? Please? Or did it fill the time in a way that was relaxing? Because this is relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. Did it fill the time in a way that was relaxing so that a little while could go on yet for a while before a while, that more time could last before a little while was up? I'll never know your individual perceptions, but there it is. So I'm going to say that at this point, since I am now touching up the very last one of these that needs touch-up, that in fact a little while has elapsed. And I will tell you about Dyson Dungeons as I cap this up and wash my brush. So Dyson Dungeons is a group of friends and relatives who started out and continue to do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. In fact, we are a Dungeons and Dragons group. And our dungeon mistress, Alexis, created a wonderful world in which we play. It's very huge. I don't know, is that philosophical or just annoying? Was there a difference? Am I being philosophical? Or am I just moving air molecules around in a way that makes you think I'm saying words because that's your perception of it? Anyway, Dyson Dungeons is a group of people who've been playing Dungeons and Dragons together for now over a year, and we decided, since we were having a good time, that we would stream it, because that's what people do when they're playing Dyson Dungeons. And so on Sundays at 2, you can watch with live chat the current episode of our campaign. And if you care to, we very much appreciate it. You can go on YouTube and catch up to see how we got to where we are. But in the process of doing that, we ended up getting a 3D printer. Now we've got 3 of them back here, and 1 there and 1 there. So there's 5, 4 filaments and a rosin. So got a 3D printer and said, let's print some tiles so that we're not just playing on this mat with 1 inch by 1 inch squares on it. And so we started printing walls and pillars and tents and sort of scatter stuff, campfires and things, and it added sense of, we had these little minifigs for ourselves to represent our characters. And then it just got out of hand, and we kept making more and more dungeon tiles and created taverns and warehouses and sewers and caves and all sorts of things. And what we're doing now is producing sewer tiles for just a lot of sewers. Anyway, yeah. And that's why you've got Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons, because we decided to start streaming. Since we were painting all of these things, I said, well, let's stream that, because, stream everything, right? Well, this is part of everything. And after I did the touch-up, there is a spot there that didn't get touched. So now we're doing streaming of Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2. And we have been doing various animals that Zoria Arsul, our changeling druid, can change into. We have done minifigs of ourselves, and more recently a whole bunch of that might end up showing up as NPCs, as either adversaries or friends. You never know what our DM will do to us. And dungeon tiles, and most recently Submarine Wednesdays, which will resume next week Wednesday, and that's where I got in several, because I wasn't sure how many kits it would take to get one complete kit, several authentic vintage 1960s Renoir, George Washington, Polaris, not Poseidon, this is before the Poseidons, Polaris launching nuclear subs. It's a cutaway where one part of the hull hinges down and you can see the interior of it. So there's a nostalgia thing. These are all painted earlier, so they are very done. It's kind of a nostalgia thing. I thought, I'd like to build some of those models from my past, because what you do when you get older is just, relive your history. because that's the thing you do. And the thing I'm doing is working on one of these George Washington submarines by piecing together the pieces from a couple of kits and attempting to make it look better than I did when I was 12. I'm stacking these up off of these drying trays, and as I wash them, I'll be putting them back onto the drying tray off to my side. Oh yeah, these are the flat floors. This is actually the sewer trough, the sewer bottom, which is cool because these get multiple layers. Green, because the whole thing is covered with algae-like slime. Yeah, this whole thing is rotated now, so I'm trying to figure out which way is which. The camera got rotated 90 degrees during Zoria's Nicole's streams. Yeah, so I bought 3 kits, and it looks like one of them is virtually complete, so I haven't had to borrow any parts of the other kits yet. That might change as I get the tinier and tinier pieces or things break, and have started to build it. So yeah, but it's taken a whole lot more time and effort than I remember when I was young, because the parts aren't molded very well. They have a whole lot more detail than I remember. That all needs to be painted instead of just swooshed over with green like it says on the instructions. Some of them don't fit very well, so they need to be trimmed. Anyway, it's taking a good deal of time, and it's probably something I'll be doing on Wednesdays, for probably almost as long as it takes to complete the decimal version of 1/3. Anyway, what I'm going to be doing next is... Now, I want this to be splotchy. This is a really stiff brush, which is really good for putting wash on things like the wooden floors, where you want it to be even, okay? Where you want it to be uniform across. But we don't want the green to be uniform across. We want the algae slime to be all splotchy. So what I'll be doing is putting a bunch of it on and just going like that. You have to make a noise while you do that. It's just like, yeah, if you don't make a noise, you don't know what's really happening. So you go, yeah. So anyway, I'll be putting green wash on this, making it look all slimy, at least on the top. I'm not going to wash the sides, just the tops of these. And this has been, these washes settle, the pigment settles out really well. So this is going to be getting a big long stir, and we'll see if this raves or not. Yep, got a little bit of a rave there. There's the when it's going full speed, it doesn't much, but as it slows down, yeah, there you go. Ooh, that's for you. So yeah, Dyson Dungeons started doing more and more dungeon tiles, decided to start streaming, and I can show you some examples of them maybe after break. And that's why you're watching Relaxing Painting on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2 with a break in between. As we've been doing minifigs, I did a whole bunch of those over the last month. And now these all got printed and needed to be base coated and washed, and yeah, pretty repetitive watching these get painted, but what better way to have an opportunity to talk about numbers and things. So this is the green wash. It's green. It's a weird, nice, kind of goopy, grayish green, yellowish green, really. Anyway, yeah, you see? In this case, usually when you do this, you don't want bubbles, right? But in this case, I think that the bubbles actually aren't a real problem because they add to the goopiness. So I have to say that that's a pretty good job of making it uneven. And when that dries, it'll tone down some, but it'll still look kind of splotchy. At least that's the intent. We'll see how the intent and the reality come together here. Okay, this is faster. Spread it around and then gloop it. It's making sure that I get the corners. I'm hoping that the bubbles in there actually work out. If they don't, that would be a shame. The nice thing about this for me is that it is actually kind of relaxing because, not paying attention to really fine detail, trying to see things that are too small for my eyes to see, even with magnifiers. Anyway, yeah. So we're putting splotchy green wash on the tiles. Probably, yeah, have to make sure that it's not getting too heavy. You want them to look kind of uniform, so just the right amount of greenness on them. Trying to see. Not really sure how the camera got oriented while I was gone, and so I was trying to find my way around there. But it looks like if I move toward the palette here, effective. But yeah, we've gone from this really nice gray color to this splotchy green color. You can still see the base coat underneath it, but this wash adds a lot of color to it. So you compare the two, right? It's a definite change. This was one of the first ones I did. Yeah, and it comes out pretty well. I mean, the little bubbles kind of burst a little bit, and it's pretty uneven and splotchy. So I'm doing a pretty good job, I must say, of making it non-uniform. Big plot. This is good though. It doesn't take much wash. I was concerned when I was starting that we'd be using up a whole lot of the wash that's in that bottle, but it's not taking very much at all to cover these things. The instruction is, just spread gray paint around so that it covers everything. I can do that pretty handily. And when the instruction is, take the green stuff and just make it look all splotchy, I can do that pretty well. These sewer tiles are really good for me because they are, unlike all the shading and stuff that Nicole did on the beholder, this is matching my skill level really well, I have to say. Just be careful to get all the corners. Yep, that much I can do. The submarine is taking a lot more effort. And if you hadn't seen if you're interested in Submarine Wednesdays, I'd encourage you to look at the YouTubes of, I think there'd be two streams associated with the submarine. One is the unboxing. And during that, I spent some time going through the 3 model kits, explaining the various, anyway, explain why I bought 3. And you can see that one of them, they were all started. Okay? People bought these submarine models and they take all the parts off of the trees, and so they're scattered all over the place, and some of them are broken. So when you look at the vintages, unless you're buying one to collect as opposed to build, then you want one that's maybe still in its shrink wrap. And what's the point of that, really, other than to put it on a shelf? But oftentimes you want one where the parts are like still attached to the trees and maybe even in their original plastic wrap and stuff. But I wanted to build one, so it seemed, I didn't want to, well, 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to pay that much that you would for a pristine model, because I was going to, build it as opposed to admire the box top. So the alternative was to get them that were opened and frequently started. And by started, I mean all the parts are off the trees, so you couldn't tell if they were all there or not. What you could do is you could tell there were just a whole lot of little parts scattered around inside the box, and the box had a little tear in the bottom, so you don't know if they fell out or not. The two sections that are started first are the forward torpedo room and the sail. The sail is the conning tower kind of thing, where the periscope and whatever, snorkels and stuff, radio antenna come up. So yeah, when I bought these things, all you could tell was the pictures on eBay, and they're not a close-up and they're not comprehensive, so I could see that they had all been started. In one case, nothing had been painted, which is good, because as I'll describe in a bit, the paint jobs that were done when people started these and abandoned them when they did, you'd start these things and you'd go, I got this first bit done and it took forever and the rest doesn't look like fun. So a lot of these things got abandoned very quickly. Anyway, let me keep stirring this. Hi, new follower. Thank you and welcome. Just in time to hear the story of Submarine Wednesdays. But welcome to Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2, more or less, with a break in between. And what I'm doing now is putting the slimy green algae wash on the floors of sewer tiles. So these are solid floors, basically for the expansion of the sewer, so that the sewer itself can be really quite large. And fairly soon. I'll show you one. We have the sewer troughs themselves, and these are also slimed. But then there's a black wash in the center where the water flows, followed by either an epoxy or a realistic water trickle of sewerage down the center. And these turn out really pretty neatly when they are layered like that. These also come with walls that slope up, and the slime climbs up the walls, and you get little drips. Anyway, the sewer tiles come out pretty well. I know lots of places will make sewer tiles, but art sewer tiles have special features that are unique to Dyson Dungeons tiles, in that on the bottoms of these, in these little holes, go ball magnets, and then the base is clipped on, and the ball magnets allow the tiles to adhere to each other. But unlike clips, you can put clips in there that are hard to take in and out. These are almost magical in that they grip to each other on any surface. Giving this splotchiness, because algae grows in splotchiness. And I would show you them, but I don't want to get green wash all over what are otherwise nicely base coated and painted tiles. I have too much wash on my brush, so we will do 2 instead of just 1 to get some of this off. Yeah. So we prepare these initially for our D&D stream, which is still continuing on Sundays at 2, also on YouTube, and also as podcasts if you just want to listen to it, or as Alexis says, earwatch. And I say listen because, I can't say all these newfangled things. Yeah. But I was talking about Submarine Wednesdays, which is when I work on my vintage run wall cutaway atomic Polaris launching submarine. I started that a couple of weeks ago, and there's 2 episodes on YouTube. One is the unboxing. Anyway, I was just saying that I had to get multiples because one was not painted, but they started cementing it. So there's very badly glued together torpedo room and things, but the parts aren't painted, so they're pretty salvageable. There's another one where the painting started, but it wasn't cemented. That's the one I'm actually working with, because the things that were painted were the torpedoes, and it was really easy to clean those up. And the parts needed a lot of cleaning anyway, because all the mold marks were showing really badly. Anyway, I got started on that 2 weeks ago before I took a break this last Wednesday. But I'll be picking up again next week, Wednesday, as I second coat the periscopes and the torpedoes and begin painting some of the interior colors. And this model fits my skill level pretty well in that in some ways it's incredibly detailed. And wires and dials and clocks and the clock faces show with the little hands, and not the numbers, but at least the 12 spots around the edges. In some ways it's incredibly detailed, and in other ways it's just impressionistic, like the bunks and the tables and things, where they are very unrealistic in the way they're printed. But the painting of it is monochromatic. I'm not going to be doing shading and washing and things on it. I'm just trying to get the colors to sort of match the box top is what I'm attempting to do with the model. But I also want to catch a lot of the detail that I didn't when I was 12, because, I didn't even remember noticing it was there. The painting instructions say paint this bulkhead green. So the torpedo doors and the dials and the control surfaces and panels all got painted green, which in fact happened with the models that I bought, the ones that were started and painted. It was just everything was painted green, because that's what the instructions said, except for some little fire extinguishers that were painted red. And of course, that paint got slopped all over into the green, because whoever started the model abandoned it quickly, which means that they were not doing this as an experienced modeler. So neither am I. I'm just trying to make it look okay, but mostly just catching some of the detail on it. So on Wednesday, I'll be doing a couple of things. One is there's a lot of the interior of the torpedo room is painted green, as is the sail. I don't know why. It's just the color that it's supposed to be, so I'm following the box top. So I'll be trying to get a color that comes close to the way it looks on the box top, and then trying to get that on without brush marks, because it isn't big enough really, and the model isn't fine enough to require me going to an airbrush. And then I'll be starting to work on the detail of the torpedo hatch bulkhead. We'll be discovering just how capable I am in getting that done, because it's really tiny. I mean, some of it is way finer than the finest brush I have, so I'll be, trying to use a pen instead, which is a fairly common technique. In fact, you can even buy pens that you can load with paint, which I don't have. So as you're joining, you'll be discovering that this is not a how-to painting show, because I am not that skilled, but it will be a how to make dungeon tiles look like dungeon tiles, and how to make a 1960s model look like someone would have started it back in the 1960s. Thank you for following. It's really appreciated. If you like what you're seeing, anybody who's watching this on YouTube or live, you are most welcome to become a subscriber. Please do that. And if you can become a patron, you can go to Patreon. I'm not sure how people say it really, but patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons. And if you become a patron, you get access to our improv sessions, which are hilarious and wonderful. And at certain levels, even the ability to have some effect on our D&D campaign. If you find it relaxing to join us with relaxing painting on Dyson Dungeons on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or to join us in our D&D campaign Sundays at 2, or at your convenience on YouTube or as a podcast. Support is really, really, really welcome. Okay. You're putting a lot more on this drying tray than were here originally, which is fine. Given the pace at which I'm moving here, finish these flat floors being appropriately non-uniform in color to represent the splotchiness of the algae growing on them. We get started on the troughs. See how quickly those go. Okay. There's room on the tray. I've got 3 of these, including this one left, and there's room on the tray for 2. Great. Sometimes the numbers don't work in your favor. Sometimes they do. But I'm going to have to get a different tray here to accommodate the ones I'll be doing next. Excuse me for a moment as I put this tray away and move on to the one below it. Right. Give this another stir so in case it's settled, it's mixed. So that last one is just going to wait for the rest of the ones that I base coated a little bit earlier in the stream. And I'm going to start doing these troughs, which have a real different texture to them. So we'll see how it goes. Get it into the spaces between the blocks. Because unlike the other ones where they're black, they're really deep, these are shallow and they'll show, a little bit harder to get it to be uneven. But I will do my best to be scabby looking. Okay, I think that works okay. So I just need to kind of brush, make sure I'm brushing with and against the that. Okay, that's a little bit. Okay. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but one of our dogs decided to be a guard dog for some reason about something. Yeah, I think doing that kind of swirly thing actually works better because it gets it into the spaces between the blocks and also kind of lobs it up as opposed to brushing, which evens it out. And I want it to be not even. And the bubbles themselves are not a bad thing because they kind of, as they dry, there would be bubbles in a sewer, right? There's like a dozen of these. When I'm done with these troughs, taking a break, and we'll be back, as I always say, in 20 to 30 minutes, and it's always like 35. So I won't lie about it. I'll be back after break, and it will be less than an hour. In fact, it'll be really close to like 30 minutes, which is usually what happens. I go up and have a little bit of a lunch maybe or a snack and hydrate and check emails. Look for Easter costumes for the dogs. I'm really surprised. I looked a little bit earlier before I started the show here, expecting pet sites to be just full of like rabbit ears and Easter bonnets and Easter dresses and things, and there was just nothing there. It was really kind of odd. Plenty of things for Christmas and Halloween. No, missing a real opportunity. They're not having Easter outfits for one's dogs. And it's probably not too early because, as I've said in one of the streams earlier, holidays all seem to start at least a month before they exist, before they happen, and then they end before they even start, at least in terms of the sales that you get. Anyway, yeah. A surprising lack of Easter finery for one's dogs. It's good and gaudy. Yeah. Be more attentive to the sides here than the middle because the middle part gets washed in kind of a black wash anyway, because the nature of the mold is different in the center where the liquid is, because on the edges you get more like algae and things, but in the center it's stuff, and so it's brownish blackish color as opposed to this green. I guess 3 more after this. We'll get those done. Make them look appropriately gloopy. take a short break and come back and, well, there's no shortage of them. And that's not even all of them. So there's a lot of tiles to turn LGE. I think there's 2.5 more drying racks left after getting the ones done that are here on the work table. I'll do a couple more because I want to use up the wash that I put in the palette here. I don't want to waste that. And it looks like there's enough there to do like one more maybe. So I will. One's because the troughs are gone. They're done. Yep. It was on the brush onto those. All right. So having blotched up green slime all over these, it's in the water, cap that up, set that aside. I'm going to be taking a break now I'll be back no later than 12:30, maybe even sooner. When I get back, I'm going to continue the quest of turning these very plain gray base coated tiles into algae covered sewer floor tiles. So I got a bunch of them here. And then there's a couple trays left, including one full tray of the troughs. So I'll just be using this green wash and the brush, this bigger brush, and splatting it around. And yeah, there was to begin with 144. There's a gross of tiles. So I think, yeah, it's taken like 2 streams just to get them gray painted. And I'm not sure, even though this wash is going really fast, just it's just a lot of tiles. But I'm sure that it will make a beautiful, huge sewer. So before I go on break, I want to show you how these work. I'll take these gloves off. So these are our dungeon tiles, and this is an example of a stone dungeon. As you can see, they hold together, right? But because you can hear the little magnets in them, the magnets in the bases that I showed you before, these little holes, each one of those has a ball magnet in it, so they reorient themselves. You can put together a dungeon in any orientation that you want, and it holds together just really, really well. And these are made as one solid piece, except for the base that's clipped on after the magnets are put in. So they're very, very sturdy. I mean, you'd have to like mash them with a hammer really to break them. but that's how they work. And we have other pieces that go with them, like this. These are doors, and the doors work. There. Dungeon tiles, that's how those work. And then we also have several sets that are wooden floors and beamed walls with stucco. And these I think they're pretty straightforward to make and to paint, but I think they come out looking really cool. So we use these for warehouses and taverns and thieves guilds and things like that. So these are the kinds of dungeon tiles that we work on. These are, as you can see, pretty standard walk through a stone dungeon kind of things. But these others that we're working on are sewers. On our stream, we initially spent a huge amount of time in sewers, largely because sewer tiles are some of the first ones we made. We haven't been in a sewer in a long time. So because we have been painting sewer tiles, I'm anticipating that our DM is going to be putting us in a sewer sooner than later. But thank you for becoming a follower. If you can become a subscriber, that'd be great. And if you'd like, please join us on our D&D campaign on Sundays or catch old episodes on YouTube. But I am going to take a break, and I will be back in somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And we will continue putting green slime on the floor of the sewer. Okay, see you then. And break is over. And when you get older, you have permission to go and just like on the commercials about turning into your parents. Well, I'm just turning into me. But weird things start to ache in weird little ways. Not in a major way, but just little surprising stuff. Yeah. Okay. Well, I got back before 12:30 by 2 minutes. And I will now start putting green stuff on all of the ones that I base coated earlier in this stream. We'll start out with those and get those done. And then, depending on how much time is left, continue to move on until the task is completed. Making sure that I'm on camera. I have this tendency to not be. They wandering off the edge. Okay. Doing this resulted in a much less uniform surface. Wow, we've got lots of bubbles on that. They tend to be less bubbly later. But that's what we're trying to achieve here, is the inconsistent look of naturally growing slime. Brush a little more slowly. Yeah, that results in fewer bubbles and a little more inconsistency. Anyway, I'm going to be spending the next hour and a half green sliming these gray sewer tiles. And I don't know, I'm not sure if it's going to be possible to finish them all today, even with that amount of time, and the fact that they go pretty quickly, because for whatever diabolical reason, our DM decided that it was important to have a gross 144 sewer floor tiles. And the number is, I mean, it must have something to do with some design. I'm not sure what the design of the dungeon is going to be. I haven't seen the wall tiles yet. There must be a whole bunch of the walls that curve up from the troughs. This new orientation, everything is 90 degrees from, well, the camera's turned 90 degrees. And so what I'm seeing and you're seeing on the screen is if I move to my right, I'm moving up on the screen, which is just fine for this, I guess, because, I wanted to see what was going on. I'm not sure how well it will work for the submarine. We'll see on Submarine Wednesday. I'm going to get far enough along on this today, so that there won't be very much of sewer tilishness left on Monday. So I'm not sure what I'll be painting on Monday. I can't give you a preview. I'll be very likely finishing. I doubt that I'll finish all of these today. We'll see. But if I don't, there'll be a little bit of time before the break. Probably not even the whole 2-hour session before the break, before I am done sliming the sewer tile floors. I need to turn this way a little bit. There we go. Now I'm more likely to be on screen. So it's most likely that I won't finish these today, but there won't be very much left for Monday. So I'm not sure what we'll have in mind. I've got a whole bunch more minifigs to do. Looking over there. 6 more of them that have already been printed on the rosin printer that I can start on. One of them has a broken sword, so I'll get to do my now almost well-practiced fabricate a replacement sword out of a toothpick thing. I've done that a couple of times with success. What happened is that the sword blade, in one case, it didn't print. It was like a print failure because the sword just sort of stuck out and was either unsupported or I'm not sure what happened, but it was pretty straightforward to get a toothpick and whittle it and sand it down so that it replaced the other blade and didn't look too bad. It wasn't quite, the surface of the toothpick wasn't as smooth. It had more texture than the surface of the plastic print or the rosin print. But once it was painted, it looked all right. Anyway, this sword is longer, and I will have the opportunity to fabricate one of those. Maybe that's something I'd work on Monday. I don't think we have more of these. If they were done, I would start base coating the walls, because I know that there has to be a lot of walls, straight walls, corners, walls with sewer pipes sticking out of them somewhere. I don't know if they've been printed yet or if we're still waiting for that. I'll have to check to see what's going on with that. But the sewer set is not complete without walls. Oh, yeah. Some of the walls, if I recall correctly, are printed so that there are bars across them. The bars being like nails that have been trimmed that fit into the holes that are in the print. Because, I mean, what good is a sewer if you don't have like bars or barred gates, right? And if you've ever watched our campaign, you know that we can't resist bars. Both kinds, bars that serve alcohol, but also bars that are metal poles stuck into something, closing off what's behind it. And we have been known, our DM always has, is ready for almost everything except what we actually end up doing, because we get off on these little tangents in our characters do that we shouldn't, because they're just like red herrings or just part of the scenery, but we take them very seriously. So bars in a sewer, that bar access to another part, become irresistible, and we have spent like up to a half hour with crowbars and spoons and trying to cut the bars, trying to dig under them, trying to pry them, trying to bend them, all sorts of things to get through. In fact, one case, DM just sort of broke the third wall or the fourth wall or whatever wall it is, and just said, you can't get through the bars no matter what you do. It's just part of the gameplay. I am metagaming here. Just stop. You can't do it. Quit trying. So, of course, we tried a couple more times, but then that's another one of our warm-ups, that sometimes we do warm-ups and they're just so successful that they become part of actual gameplay. But remember that one, Nines, the bar. And maybe we can do really awful things, like the bar has a jukebox, right? Those are music playing thing. And they only play one song, bar, and, right? That isn't quite how it goes, but that's how it would go here, because it's a bar. Baran. Yeah. So in order to get in, you have to figure out how to get through the bars, right? But even more insidiously, after you've been at the bar, and you got through the bars that block the way to the bar, and you've enjoyed listening to Baran long enough so that just decide it's time to escape. Getting out requires you to go through even yet more bars, and those bars are more difficult to get through than the ones getting in. So it'd be like any kind of, retail establishment, like malls and things, where there are stop signs at the intersections, but the stop signs are for the cars leaving because you've already bought stuff. But the people coming in don't have to stop because, you want people to come in and buy stuff. So the bar would have relatively simple bars to get through, so that, there was a little bit of a challenge. Otherwise, what's the point of having the bars, right? Yeah, I think that would be it. But the bars to get out would be much more challenging than the bars to come in. And then you'd have intermediate bars getting to the bar. Maybe you'd even have some bars at the bar. Like if you ordered a drink or something, it was behind bars. You play Bar Barbaran. Patrons would all be behind bars. Be interpreted. Yeah, I think that's good. And we had some ideas before we went on, before I took a break, about other warm-ups. There was something about the pretzel franchise. You remember what that was? Do something about pretzels. Oh, flippy pretzels. You flip your lid over these. We'll never flip you off. At flippy pretzels. It was something like that. We definitely need to do that. And the bar. I hope you're keeping track of this stuff. Coming up with some of our best ideas here on relaxing painting. Maybe it's because we're relaxed, when we sit down to record our session and DM says, and what are we doing for warm-up today? There's this pressure to come up with something clever, which we inevitably do because we are very clever in our warm-ups, clever and entertaining. Almost always the content of the warm-up has almost nothing to do with what we said it would be. Okay, I have to admit that. I have to take this drying rack full of tiles and put it aside here. Partially covered with gray tiles that need to be, so stack them up on here. But now that we get under pressure and we come up with ideas, and usually what we start out as, or what we tell the DM the idea is going to be, is not at all what it turns out to be. We have to get another one of these sooner or later. We've gone through quite a lot of green wash here on the 144 floor tiles we're working with. But here, since we're relaxing, it's possible to be very creative and come up with incredibly clever ideas like bars and flippy pretzels. It's just part of the challenge is remembering them. For the next recording session. It should be simple for people who aren't under 7 or over 70. But, can't always count on that. doing a pretty good job of making these not uniform. Appropriately blotchy. I'm guessing that if you've been watching this stream since the beginning, that you're probably pretty glad that I haven't been counting anything and coming up with all sorts of numerical stuff. So I'll continue not paying attention to the numbers that I'm dealing with here. Dealing with infinities and other things like that that are disturbing to think about. Or boring. Probably that. Not so much disturbing as, please, I don't need to hear any more of this. So yeah, a bar. I think we have this pretty well done. It's almost like we rehearsed it. I don't think the DM is paying attention to the stream as it's happening. She's probably like working on something new for the printers to print, or something for our session. We could probably pull off something like the bar and not have her really know what's happening. And maybe even wishing she never did, but there's that. So what did we came up with? Flippy Pretzels? I'm sure it was Flippy Pretzels. That's the franchise that was developed off of the pretzel stand that gave us a pretzel day, where we successfully had a pretzel day. And what, might you ask, is a pretzel day? Well, flips. Yep. Flippy flips. Flippy sounds like flippy pretzels might be like the Chuck E. Cheese equivalent of a pretzel bar. This flips pretzels is more like like they might even serve alcoholic beverages there or something, right? Ooh. Anyway, yeah, so we found this one pretzel stand where after we bought the pretzel, the person who sold it to us was required to say, have a pretzel day. And you say, well, what does having a pretzel day mean? What it means is that the pretzel was just so amazing that you, in fact, at the end of the day, he said, wow, that was a pretzel day. That's all the explanation you need, is that it was just like that, saying that was indeed a pretzel day. Anyway, having successfully created and wished and forced people to have pretzel days, Flips Pretzels became a franchise. At least it will in our improv session. And if we're insistent on it, it might even become something that appears during our campaign, not just the improvs. So yeah, Flips Pretzels, a bar. There was another one. There was a second one other than Flips Pretzels we came up with last week when I was streaming. Probably something to do with submarines, I'm guessing, because we were talking about Submarine Wednesday, and I think that somehow got moved on to a discussion about how to bring that theme into the warm-up sessions, which are available all of them are available to you if you become a patron. You can watch these amazing warm-up sessions where we are almost always off topic by going to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons. And you too can watch the genesis of Flip's Pretzels and the Bar. Paula comes on now and wants a flip this late in the game. Well, we want to always please our viewers, no matter who they are or when they join. And so after I finish this well of green goo here, well, I will do a flip again. We have to get in the mood for Flip's Pretzels, excuse me. Don't have to be in the mood for the bar. Just have to get through the bars. And this is pretty good because the last couple of recording sessions, we've been having trouble coming up with, I can't say good ideas because that would be saying that our ideas were actually good for the improv sessions. And we can't make that claim. But ideas that had any warm-up merit at all, we've been having some difficulty doing that, probably because of the pressure of having to do that right at the moment, like spontaneous improvs. That's, I mean, come on, coming up with spontaneous improvs, that would actually be like not an oxymoron. But yeah, coming up with like 2 or 3 ideas here and then bringing them in on recording sessions would be okay. Need to flip something. Oh, I know. I could flip this little tube, this little protector tube for the end of a brush. What's good about this is that you can't really tell which way up it is when it lands. There. Anyway, I think we need to order some other things. You know, in the realm of modeling and painting. Need some more alligator clips. Let's see if those are sold at hobby shops. They might be. Otherwise, we'll just have to go to like miscellaneous purchases of things online. I need more of this green wash sooner or later. There's enough definitely to finish the tiles, even the ones that are still piled up there that I haven't even brought over here yet. There's enough for that, but depending on how many wall tiles there are, might not be enough for those. Anyway, if we do more sewers in the future, and how can you have a D&D campaign without a whole lot of sewers, right? Yeah, I'll be needing that. So if I say on stream what it is that I need, usually someone in the production crew, like when they're uploading it or they're checking it for quality or just wanting to see if I'm, saying anything or being interesting, or if the music is working or something, will catch on and say, yeah, I remember during the stream when you said that you needed to get more green wash. And I'll go, yeah, I probably said that. What of it? Well, have you done that yet? And I'll go, no, I guess I should do that. And then I'll forget. But somebody else will then be in the loop of trying to remember, and they'll eventually remind me enough times that I get another bottle or so of this green wash. So that's how that usually happens. Sometimes if I say things often enough, and they see it on more than one stream, like my head magnifiers, that's what they're called, which is weird because I will keep saying it does not magnify my head. The last thing that will happen on this stream is that I'll get a big head about it. But yeah, after saying that enough times and they caught it on the stream, somebody actually bought me a set of head magnifiers, which has turned out to be very useful and will be the next time I do minifigs, or definitely Submarine Wednesday, because there are parts of that submarine model that are really tiny. Seven left in this pile. I'm not going to do any numbers with that. I'm just going to say there are 7. Which coincidentally is the name of Zoria's baby brunette. 7s. Why don't you just do that? You could just set up a microphone and a camera at your workstation, and then as stuff pops into your head, you can just blurt it out and it would be recorded. And we can delete the recording and everything will be fine. But yeah, at least this stuff's getting recorded, so that we can just say, I had this great idea, back on one of these relaxing painting streams, of something we could do during our campaign or a D&D warm-up or something like that. And it's actually possible to retrieve it. A stream about you learning music, because you've got all these instruments as 9s on the stream. Is that you could, yeah, you're right. That would be kind of interesting. 9s learning how to play an instrument. Know that there are people out there who are proficient at this instrument, but I am not. And never will be, but you will watch me as I struggle to become not awful. Yeah, I might even, depending on when you do that, I might even join in and watch you struggle with a new instrument or not. I mean, you might just like be a natural at the crab gong. So what would you learn first? Like the crab gong or the slide whistle? Ocarina? That was one of your firsts. Yeah, the ocarina, but you were the chosen one. Not again. Really? The background music went off again? It probably went off during break. The music is supposed to be, there's some sort of magic thing that's supposed to make the music like fade out and fade back in, and maybe it didn't fade in. Well, as they say, we'll have to fix that in post, as I'm like an hour away from ending this and have not learned how to fix that on the fly. But thanks for mentioning that. That can be something to for troubleshooting between now and Monday. So why did the background music disappear? But if the background music is gone, then if I become silent, not that that seems likely, because then there'll be nothing for people to listen to. Get that, the green slime in the little well ended just with the last one that I had in this pile. What a wonderful coincidence. And that's all it is. It's definitely not part of the plan. That would be, way more planning thingly, whatever, than that would really happen. So, yep. I need to remove this tray and get another one. So I'll be back in a bit. Tray. I'm going to be doing a whole lot of these. Wow. Pretty amazing. It's always surprising to me when something doesn't go well. Pick a whole bunch of things up here. So you've got a stand. Well, that's pretty good. You've got a stand for the camera. You have a camera to stand on it. You need to keep mixing these, especially as it gets closer to the bottom of the bottle, because that's where the pigment would settle. And yeah, I know screws are pretty magical, really. They work. You can even lift, you can use screws to lift water. Okay, it's going to take some cleaning when we're done. Yeah, you can even use screws to lift water, like up out of a river bank for a dozen feet or something. And your irrigation is pretty amazing. It's called Archimedes screw. Archimedes really invented it or not, but gets credit for it anyway, deserved or not. And how would we ever know, right? We weren't around. No patents were filed. No intellectual property lawsuits were recorded. Anyway, yeah, it's called Archimedes screw, probably by somebody who really invented it later. It would have been like the ancient Egyptian equivalent of Betty Smith. Yeah. And of course, that wouldn't make sense, would it? Because it would have been invented, if it was invented in ancient Egypt, that would have been before Archimedes. And why would they call it? Of course, they would call it Archimedes screw, because it's like a brand name, right? So Archimedes hasn't even been born yet, like for centuries. And somebody invents the screw that lifts the water up out of the Nile to irrigate their fields of whatever it is they were growing, quinoa or something, and avocados for their toast. And they're all sitting around saying, "Oh, this screw is pretty cool, but we can't just call it Betty Smith screw. That won't go anywhere. And besides, people are in ancient Egypt here are kind of sexist and all, so that wouldn't work at all. What should we call it?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know. Let's make up a name, kind of like, Xerox or Exxon or something, that not a real word or not a real name, but it sounds kind of cool, so you use it anyway." And they would say, "How about Archimedes?" Yeah, that's a thing. It wouldn't infringe on anybody's trademark or whatever, because there is no person named Archimedes now, and won't be for centuries. Doesn't even sound like an Egyptian word, which is even better. Which is why we have all these names now with Z's and X's and stuff in them, because they go out of their way to use to trademark names of things that aren't really words in any language. Sometimes if they don't pay attention to that, it could be, yeah, it's a really fine sounding word in this language, but it's a curse in another one. So that would shut that out, market down. Anyway, yeah, so they said, "Oh, Archimedes. It's an Archimedes screw." And then later on, when Archimedes was actually born, that word was around there. It was known as Archimedes screw. It might even been named after it. You never know. People mistakenly associated it with the historical figure of, assuming, of Archimedes, as opposed to just an effort to trademark a name that wasn't offensive to anybody in one of the other countries where they're attempting to sell these. So you could begin to imagine how that would work. It's like, oh yeah, we should expand our market for these screws. Let's go to Babylon. That'll show them. We'll show them just how clever we are. And they showed them, and they were amazed because, oh yeah, it's like magic. This water goes up when you turn the crank. That doesn't make any sense at all, but it works. So we'd love to have this for our gardens here. We wouldn't have to be filling buckets and dumping them into troughs and things. We could just have turning the screw, and the water just magically climbs up into our garden beds here. What do you call this? And they'd say, "Oh, this is called an Archimedes screw." Archimedes. Yeah, that's kind of a clever sounding name. And it's not offensive in our language, so we'll take 20. Thing, all the traveling, they all worked on commission, of course, but the traveling salespeople selling these spread the technology throughout the world, close enough for them to get to by foot or pack animal. And then at some point, some little kid was born, and they say, what shall we name this person? And just like nowadays, sometimes people get named after brand names. I don't know why, but that happens. People get named after products. And it says, I don't know, let's name the kid Archimedes. But what we think really happened actually could have happened just backward compared to what we think we knew. So Archimedes was named after the brand name of the water-raising river screw instead of the other way around. And how would we know that now? Some bizarre speculation, wasn't it? But that's the kind of thing you can expect to happen on Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons. That could even have been an episode on Peabody's Fractured History. Gone back in his Wayback Machine and found out the truth about Archimedes and the screw. And if you don't know what that is, if you're not familiar with the Wayback Machine, you should get yourself some old episodes of Rocky and Bullwinkle. And Peabody and Sherman were frequently featured as this sort of sidebar cartoon on the show. Dudley Do-Right of Monty's, another kind of side character. You mean happening? Hmm? How are you using that word? That's kind of an archaic thing to call something happening, isn't it? That dates back to probably the late 50s or 60s. In fact, there were entire events that were called happenings. Probably because of a lack of imagination in naming stuff. So what's this thing you're going to? I don't know. It's just happening. Okay. I mean, that could have been the level of thought that went on behind that. And it's like, oh, what's this thing? Oh, no, it's just happening. It's just happening, man. So then they became called happenings because, the name just stuck because it didn't require really much to think about the content of the event. I think that was trademarked or anything, so anybody could have a happening and no one could sue them for doing it. Those were the days. Get sued for almost everything. At least not that I knew of back then. I mean, what would I know? I was like in grade school. So there might have been lawsuits going on all the time, but I don't know. But I know there wasn't one about happening. They even wrote a song about it. Of course, there were songs about almost everything then too, just like there are now. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I never claimed I wasn't archaic. I mean, what's wrong about talking about 60s cartoons? That was back when they were good. There, they just insulted generations of cartoon watchers. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I mean, when you're old and nostalgic, and in my day, we had good cartoons like Rocky and Bullwinkle or George of the Jungle. El Kabong. Terrific. Super Chicken. Made references to Super Chicken here before. How many of you have gone through the trouble of looking through historic archives to find out about Super Chicken? You think that you're in danger, afraid that you might take a licking, call on Super Chicken. Yeah, well, in my day, um, no, we didn't. It was unusual. I mean, it was hard to find. I don't recall that there were Super Chicken action figures. There weren't any. Just, I guess we weren't either imaginative enough or greedy enough, or maybe the production costs were too high. I don't know, but nobody had little Dudley Do-Right action figures, much less now. Hmm. Only later, I think, much later, did you start getting Rocky and Bullwinkle and Natasha and Boris. So if we ever had a time machine, that would be the thing, would be to go back to before the days of cashing in on action figures related to your cartoons and stuff and introducing them. Yeah, I mean, who would make them? What were the big toy manufacturers? There was Kenner, Super Chicken Funko Pop. Is it the same Super Chicken, or is it something that came later? You could tell by whether or not the Super Chicken had supervision or not. What's a Funko Pop? Isn't Funko like the name of a manufacturer? You haven't been around long enough to have a your day yet. You're really not permitted to use the phrase back in my day until you're old enough that what you're saying about your day is what you're imagining because you can't really remember it. And I can say that being in that demographic, not trying to be offensive. Okay. I need to scroll here. Thousands of Super Chicken figures. I can't believe that. I can't believe that original Super Chicken. So who's the sidekick for Super Chicken? Why can't I remember that? Do they have a Funko Pop or whatever it is of the sidekick? The one who always used to say, Super Chicken, why don't you use your supervision? That was kind of the running gag. That kind of thing used to be funny. It's just like everybody had to have a sidekick. Like Tom Terrific had Mighty Manfred. No, was it Fred the Veget? Maybe it was. Now that you mention it, I vaguely remember that there was a lion like that. Either that, you're just playing with me here. No, two more of these troughs. You know, I'm going to be able to finish this stream, even if it goes a little bit long. I've only got like one tray, unless there's another one hiding somewhere, which might be. One more tray of floor tiles to turn green. I've got a half hour to get it done, so that's pretty amazing. Part of it is that this is just, really fast. It looks really fast on the stream. I've noticed, and I've said this before, that when I watch a stream of this, it's like, wow, that's moving along really quickly, much more quickly than it was subjectively as I was doing it. But yeah, I've just got one more. Oh, you're really watching it? Yeah, I think that's true. Now that you mention it, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but there was a super sauce and I think that's how it worked. It's actually pretty disturbing when you think about it. Because if that's what was really happening, that was a kids' cartoon show, and they were learning. Okay, that was. It just never struck me the same way when I was watching it originally. But yeah, I think that's actually true. Wow. So that puts Super Chicken in a whole new light. But he did solve problems. He just accidentally by using his superpowers after he drank his super sauce. Well, like a lot of cartoons back in the 60s, they were like after school event kinds of things. I think maybe they were aimed at it was always mothers then, right? Because that's when it was that that was something that the mothers who stayed at home taking care of the households and the kids and things, because there were always kids, not kid, could relate to. So as kids would be watching it and mom would be watching it along with us. That was a bonding experience, sort of. Didn't call it then. Yeah. And mom would be laughing right along with us. You watch old Rocky and Bullwinkles, there'd be kind of things like that, but not quite as obvious. But yeah, that's that I do believe that's what happened. It was kind of like it was a cartoon precursor to a real life event. So, like you said, a rich guy who thought he could solve problems, kind of like maybe somebody now who's a rich guy who thinks that after he has enough marijuana, can just solve problems too. Kind of a time traveler, kind of, or maybe it's just one of those things that's universal to all times and places. Just maybe the sauce of choice has changed. That's all. Um, really, you need to ask that? It's super. So it'd be like a anti-gravity kind of thing. Or it could just be a cartoon. That's kind of an obscure pun too, the super coupe, because chicken coop, but you put an E at the end, and that's a kind of a car. So there's that. If I'm painting these, I'm noticing that the inconsistencies of the wash are being applied consistently. They're all showing up in the same quadrant. The one I paint first, the upper left, from my perspective, which is kind of okay because these can rotate in any direction. But anyway, I'm being very consistently inconsistent. So started a different quadrant. Of course, if I make the upper left dark and now I'm doing the lower right, one could just do that and we're right back to where we started. So anyway, there's that. That's right. It isn't that a drink could be potentially that powerful. It's that nobody has asbestos gloves anymore. So somebody watching it now would go, what's asbestos? And we would just say, oh, that was one of those very special poisonous things that we had back in the 60s that you can't enjoy anymore. But where did this drink come from? This episode that you're watching? Was it at the bar? Someone trying to poison Super Chicken? Oh, is that the super sauce? The great old innocent days when kids could watch a cartoon show and the super sauce was mixed and served in a martini glass. Can't do that kind of thing anymore. Yeah, back in the day when the kids, like when we were growing up, said, "Oh, we're going to go over and play in the field," which was like 3 or 4 blocks away, and it was a field, and it's just a field, and be home for dinner, and the kids would just disappear off to the field, and the mother, it was just fine. And somehow or other, and I can't remember how, we always knew when it was time for dinner. We didn't have wristwatches or anything. We must have just had this great intuitive sense of it's time to put food in us or something. Anyway, yeah. So back in the day when you could do that kind of thing without worrying about things to worry about, you could have a chicken that flew in a super coop and drank super sauce to get the superpowers out of the martini glass. And we wouldn't think anything of it, although I'm sure the adults who watched it along with the kids had a great time. I think, watching that part, super sauce, ha, ha, ha. I think I need some super sauce myself. Dad, Mom, well, you have superpowers now? You're drinking super sauce. Well, that's what Super Chicken does. You've got a glass. He has glasses just like that, and that's how he drinks his super sauce. Oh, yeah, this is super sauce. Can I have some? No. Unlike Super Chicken, you have supervision. Down to 8 of these. Be able to finish more or less on time. Even have time for a commercial about Dyson Dungeons and what you should be doing if you enjoy it. Super sauce was, it was just more common back then. And it probably is now. Yeah, back in the day, if you watch some old TV, it's kind of amazing. Like if you had a, TV show and someone was an executive of something, You know, maybe the CEO, although they didn't call him that, but the kind of the equivalent. Even comedy shows, there was always a liquor bar. I mean, like a real liquor bar in their office. It was just part of the furniture. This it was just there on all the shows. Lawyers' offices, comedians like the Mary Tyler Moore Show or the Dick Van Dyke Show. It was then before she became the more famous of the two. Yeah, there was no wonder things were so great then. That's what it's all about. I mean, no wonder, because everybody was running on super sauce all the time. Well, we're getting down to the last pile of these. All sorts of bubbles on them. Make sure that nothing is uniform. Well, anyway, I'm glad that you did some research into it, because that brought back memories of details that I was not remembering. Puts things just a whole new perspective on some of these things. Yes. Yeah, it must have been it. Is the super sauce. It's interesting what was, salient to a child and what wasn't. You know, so the recurring joke about supervision, that stuck. The theme song, something about a stranger, if you think that you're in danger, if you're afraid that you might take a licking, something like that, call on Super Chicken. So I guess it was an anti-bullying thing, and fear of strangers. Of course, the thing about strangers is probably not so much about, just repeating the warning of don't talk to strangers as much as something needed to rhyme with danger. The expediency of dealing with making sure that the rhyme worked is probably more important than anything else. Okay, well, there's probably enough left in here to do some walls. To get dark green, to write down the number. sometimes the names aren't that helpful, and you need to actually have the number of the paint to make sure you're getting the right one. And then Vallejo makes a couple of things. They make model colors and game colors, at least 2 lines, each of which have different numbers on each of their colors. So now there's some green wash wells and some green wash water and a brush that's mostly clean now. And I don't see any more of these laying around. It seems like I'm missing like a whole rack of them now. Well, part of it is because I put more on the racks, the drying racks, than were there originally. But here on Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons, I have now completed the base coating and washing of 144 sewer dungeon tile floors. And not sure what I'll be picking up on Monday. Maybe going back to some minifigs. Very likely, unless there's been more printing and priming going on. It is. That was a number thing, That was like a number arithmetic thing. If we put those into one square, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 rectangles, each rectangle carried 2 dozen. Okay. So it was 6 times 2, which is 12. 12 dozen. A dozen being 12. What a coincidence. Yeah, if we just put them in one square, it would be 12 on a side. And maybe that's why they call it squared when you do that, is because the way you could calculate it before you could count numbers was to just make a square of the number that you were multiplying by. So like you put 4 here and 4 here, and it'd be 4 sides on a square, and then you could count them, and you could see what 4 squared would not figuratively but literally be. How primitive. Yeah, so it's 12 squared, and I'm very proud of you. That was pretty advanced arithmetic. Squares. So Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons. You have maybe relaxed or not, but I did painting. And I'll be back on Monday, because we do this Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 2 with a break in the middle. And on Monday, likely picking up with 1 or more of the minifigs that are there that I've been painting before all of these sewer tiles came along. And of course, there's now Submarine Wednesday going on to its 3rd Wednesday. Yeah, I think this will be the 3rd Wednesday in the series of Submarine Wednesdays, where I will begin to continue. I will continue working on the torpedo room and the sail. And between now and then, I'm going to probably practice with a couple of these paints to see if I can get them thinned appropriately so that they don't leave brush marks on the larger expanses of surfaces. And we'll go from there. So I'm sorry if the music wasn't working. I can't even find the mouse. There is so much stuff piled up on the workbench here that even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have been able to fix the music because, yeah, it's buried under something. Yeah, have a good weekend. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for the follow. If you like what you've seen or heard, please feel free to please become a subscriber. Feel free to become a follower. Tell all your friends about it. Join in on who knows what we're going to be talking about. Probably more 60s cartoons, because what else is there? On our next couple of streams. If you can, join in watching our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. which is with live chat on Sundays at 2 Eastern Daylight Time, also available on podcast and YouTube. You can catch up on the old episodes, figure out what's going on or not, depending on which ones you look at. And you can always also go to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons and become a patron, giving you access to the improvs that we've been talking about that in the near future very well may be featuring Flips Pretzels and the Bar. So thanks again for joining in, and see you Monday morning. Bye.